Welcome to the Healthy, Wealthy, and Smart podcast. Each week, we interview the best and brightest in physical therapy, wellness, and entrepreneurship. We give you cutting-edge information you need to live your best life, healthy, wealthy, and smart. The information in this podcast is for entertainment purposes only and should not be used as personalized medical advice. And now, here's your host, Dr. Karen Litzy.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Karen Litzy, and today's episode is brought to you by Optima, a net health company. Optima Therapy for Outpatient is a software solution enabling therapists and staff to do their jobs efficiently and accurately. Their software provides anytime, anywhere access to documentation, even while disconnected, and workflows that streamline patient care and save valuable time. You can check out Optima's new on-demand video to learn what's in store for outpatient therapy practices in 2020 with some of the biggest industry trends, along with tips and best practices to successfully navigate these changes. Learn more at gooptimahcs.com/healthywealthy2020. Now, on to today's episode. So like I said last week with my interview with Joe Ranke, and if you missed it, definitely go back and listen to that, especially if you have any kind of student loan debt. But the first 2 weeks of this year, we're concentrating on financial fitness. Instead of our health fitness, we're talking about financial fitness. So today, I'm really happy to have on Ryan Burklo. He's a financial planner, host of the podcast Holistic Finance, and co-owner of Quantified Financial Partners. He lives in Seattle, Washington with his wife and 2 kids. And after learning his son had a stroke while in utero, he became an avid volunteer for Pediatric Stroke Warriors. He learned much about the medical professions who cared for his son and truly enjoyed working with them both on a professional and personal level. Through his work as a financial planner, he works with medical practice owners to protect their practice, keep them financially efficient, and assist them with their eventual exit. His firm and his personal mission is to simplify finances so you can focus on what you enjoy most. So I thought, beginning of the year, let's bring Ryan on. Let's talk about how to manage debt financing and make it work for you. What is tax-efficient cash flow planning? Retirement options for small business owners and entrepreneurs, and the conversations you need to bring up with your financial advisor. So these are all really important things that if you are an entrepreneur, if you want to become an entrepreneur or small business owner, these are huge. Understanding your finances, understanding what your options are, how to plan for the future, how to plan for your eventual exit are all so important. So I want to thank Ryan for coming on and giving us a nice overview and education on all of these issues. So everyone enjoy. Hey, Ryan, welcome to the podcast. I am happy to have you on.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate the invite.
And I should mention that you do work with a lot of medical practices.
Yeah,
right?
That's really a majority of our focus is helping medical practices on the business side and merging that with the personal side, because eventually we all exit our practice in some way, shape, or form, and it turns into the personal side. So the two are married, yet business owners tend to only focus more on the business side because that's the fun side. That's what they do every day.
Exactly. And so it's great to have people like you guys to help guide us through that.
Yes.
And we hear debt a lot in the news. Mainly the focus is student loan debt, but there's all kinds of debt, right? And when you're a business owner, you may be in debt, you may not be in debt. But my question is, can debt work for you? Can it be a good thing sometimes?
Yeah, I mean, the quick answer is absolutely yes. You brought up the media and everything we're hearing in the news, and right now it's a lot of student loans, but oftentimes it's also, just debt is bad is the mantra, and
right.
You should pay it off as fast as possible. And in some scenarios, that makes sense. In other scenarios, it doesn't. It really depends on what kind of debt it is. Credit card debt, for the most part, isn't the best debt to have because it tends to be high interest rate. Right? You're getting in the double digits, 16, 17, 20% or so. But then there's other debts. Student loans can be one of them. mortgages on real estate and other debts that are lower interest rates. And you have to look at it at, if I'm going to put $1 towards that debt, if I put my dollar elsewhere, how would that act? How would that do differently? Mm-hmm. Right. And so the simple example of that is, if right now you can get a mortgage really, really inexpensive, 3.8% or something like that on a 30-year mortgage. Mm-hmm. And so if your dollar can be put back into the business or put elsewhere and beat 3.8 at a relatively low risk, well, then you'd be better off putting your dollar elsewhere, because then you'd be making money on your money. So you're leveraging that debt so your money can work harder. Whereas the credit card debt that I mentioned, if it's at 20% interest rate, well, now you have to be 20%. That's a lot harder, and the risk is a lot higher. To put it another way, if you had $1 million of cash, or $1 million sitting somewhere, and you went to buy real estate, and the real estate was worth $1 million, or you had to put the whole thing down. The $1 million sitting wherever it's sitting versus getting a debt and having to pay interest on that debt, you have to analyze, what could that $1 million be doing for you? And if that $1 million could be doing something better than a 3.8% that we were just talking about, why would you give the full $1 million to the bank? Then you have the flexibility between it all, right? Even if you're just breaking even, some people will get nervous about that too. Well, again, you've got $1 million. How much more can you do with other stuff in your business because you've got that, rather than just giving it to the bank? What type of flexibility do you possibly lose?
Got it.
So that's just a simple example that I like to use. And that's not to say that you shouldn't pay off some debts. It does go by case, but you have to look at what your dollar could be doing elsewhere, and does that make more sense? Rather than only looking at it, well, Ryan, I'm going to pay more in interest over 30 years. That's 100% true. And what could the other dollars be doing over the next 30 years?
So it could mean the difference between investing it into something that's going to give you a higher return, or putting it to use elsewhere instead of
hiring another doctor. Or another physician that's going to grow revenue by X%. That might be the better solution.
See, this is why, my brain does not work this way. This is why I need someone to kind of break it down and explain it to me as if you were explaining it to like a fourth grader.
Yeah. Well, my industry doesn't like to do that. We like to confuse people. I try to make it as simple as possible because that annoys the crap out of me.
Yeah, I appreciate that. All right. So how else so that's a great way that we can kind of make debt work for us. Are there other ways, I guess, that you can make debt work for you? Any other easy, simple examples?
Again, it's just leveraging what you currently have. And so if you can get a loan, let's just say we have a widget maker, right? And the widget maker needs to buy a machine to make more widgets. Okay. And they can go get a loan on it for X%, or they can just buy it in full. Well, what makes the most sense for your business? How are you leveraging your money to make it work as hard as possible for you? So it's a constant analysis of leveraging where the leverage is. Does it make more sense can your money work harder outside of giving it to the bank?
Got it. Yeah. So if you were to pay in full and you can make more widgets and sell more widgets and make more money, that might make more sense than making payments on that piece of equipment.
Exactly.
All right. Excellent. Thank you so much. Sorry for being a little slow on the uptake there.
No, you're good.
Now, another thing that I really wanted to talk about is this idea of tax efficiency cash flow. So in going through your website, I saw this and I thought, this is really interesting to me because I don't know that I'm being as efficient as possible. So can you explain what tax efficiency cash flow means under the lens of, your small business owner?
Yeah, so there's two sides of taxes, right? There's the taxes that you're going to pay now, right? Where the income that came in the door minus the deductions and everything that we can take as a business owner, what's left over and what we're going to pay on taxes from that on the business side as well as from the income side. And that's based on the rules and laws that are in place this year, 2019. Then there's the tax side of what am I going to get taxed on 15 years from now, 10 years from now, 30 years from now, depending on where my money and my assets are sitting. That's the side that most people don't really consider, because what they're only considered is I want to pay as little money in taxes this year.
Yes, right.
So the next question you have to ask yourself, okay, 10 years from now or 5 years from now, or whatever time period that is, where do I think taxes are going to go? Now, obviously, we can't predict this. Oftentimes, it depends on who's in office and what's going on in the economy, all that kind of fun stuff. But if you're of the opinion that taxes are going up, should you have a lot of money in assets where you have not paid taxes on them yet? No.
Yes. All right. I got it right.
Yeah, exactly. Because you've deferred the tax. So essentially, if taxes went up, now you're going to pay more in taxes. Conversely, if taxes go down, well, then you wanted to defer the tax. And the problem is we don't know.
Right.
So much of this is,
it's a gamble.
It's a balance is what I put it. So we talk about financial balance quite a bit. And it's because we don't want all of our eggs in one basket, right? We don't want all of our assets to be tax deferred, because what happens if taxes go up? Conversely, like I just said, if taxes go down. Whereas if we have our assets in different buckets, now we can actually control what tax bracket we're in 5, 10, 20, 30 years from now, just like kind of what we're doing right now in terms of our lowering our tax bill this year.
And so when you're looking at balancing and not having all your eggs in one basket, where would those eggs be?
Yeah, so it depends on what you're building in your medical practice or in your business. If your plan is, take a solo practice, like one doc, and the chances of a one doc practice being able to sell it is not very high, especially if they're the ones that are bringing in the money anyways.
Right.
You can't sell something if you're the person that you're trying to sell.
Right.
So oftentimes those type of practices, they have to build side retirement accounts, right? These are your traditional IRAs, your simple IRAs, your standard retirement accounts. And so you could be putting a bunch of money into those accounts where you deferred the taxes. So that's one asset that we could be talking about. It's also, then conversely, if you've got a multiple doc practice where you've had a couple partners, and maybe it's an inside sale and you're actually transitioning one doc out, well, how do you consider the taxation of the business? What's the cost basis? And then how are you going to sell it? Oftentimes in insider sales, what they call that, oftentimes no one writes a lump sum check and says, here you go, doc, you're gone. It's normally, let me pay you in installments over the next 10 years.
I see. Okay.
So now you have more taxes going on there.
Oh, because so if you're the doc that left the practice, you're paying taxes on that money that is coming to you in installments.
Correct. And if you're the doc that bought them out, to pay that doctor, you need the revenue of your practice to be doing a certain amount. So there's taxations on both sides of that equation.
Right. Oh my gosh. These are things like I really thought you got bought out in one lump sum. That's why when you said that, I started laughing. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, I guess installments does make more sense.
Yeah, I mean, do lump sum sales occur? Absolutely. That's not what normally occurs. What normally occurs is here's a 10-year buyout plan.
That does actually make a lot more sense. Yeah.
The steps that I have, our clients consider is, which type of practice or which type of business are you wanting to build for one? Are you building the business where you're it, and essentially you're just going to kind of run off into the sunset and business kind of goes with you, or are you trying to build a practice or a business that you can actually sell? And early on, it's kind of hard to know that, but as you're growing, you start to picture or you start to build towards one of those. And once you know that, now you can get more efficient with your money and what's going on and where to put it, how to get after it, while taking into considerations. Obviously, we don't want to pay a lot of taxes right now. So how does this all come together in one cohesive plan? That's the conversations that people should be having with their advisors.
Great. No, this is great. Yeah. And, you sort of mentioned the 401ks and setting up for retirements and things like that. And, I think like I said, we're going into a new year, we're going into 2020, and maybe there are some listeners out there who are newer practice owners, or perhaps they have not thought about their own retirement at the moment because they're building up their business. But can we talk a little bit about how one goes about setting up a retirement plan? Again, under that lens of a small business.
And on that note, we're going to take a quick break to hear from our sponsor and be right back with Ryan's answers. This episode is brought to you by Optima, a net health company. Optima Therapy for Outpatient is a software solution enabling therapists and staff to do their jobs efficiently and accurately. Their software provides anytime, anywhere access to documentation, even while disconnected, and workflows that streamline patient care and save valuable time. You can check out Optima's new on-demand video to learn what's in store for outpatient therapy practices in 2020 with some of the biggest industry trends, along with tips and best practices to successfully navigate these changes. Learn about these trends for the new year at GoOptimaHCS.com/healthywealthy2020.
Yeah. So, really depends on, how many employees we've got, what type of plan. Do we have any employees that are what we would call a key employee? And so what I mean by key employee, if you have an employee that if they quit or left, and it either cost you a lot of money because they were the customer service side of your business, or they were the office manager. So now you've got to go train and hire someone else and go do their work. So you can build in a retirement plan that helps keep that employee active and engaged in yours and your business. And that can also be part of that transition that we were just talking about as well. And so much of it is, what is it we're trying to build? If we're looking with a starter business that you were just talking about, if you've got a couple employees, it's looking at something like a simple IRA. That way it's low cost, easy to set up. You can set up matching type of contributions for your employees. You can do like a 3% type match where you can go as low as 1% in the simple. That allows your employees to be able to contribute, and you match. Now, if they don't contribute, then you don't have to match. Right. And it's low cost. The 401k side of things is more, it's better for when you have a lot more employees, like 20 plus, because there's more costs involved, and it gets a little bit more intricate. That's when you can start to design and really mess with a bunch of different things. And because you can mess with a bunch of different things, it costs money.
If you have a couple of employees, I like this: a simple IRA, a 401k for a larger company. How about if it's just you? You're a solo practitioner. How do you set up? What is your retirement plan look like?
Yeah, so you could do a SEP IRA if it's just you and you don't plan on hiring any employees. You can do the traditional IRA route as well. Then there's Roth IRA, so you can still do that standard stuff. The SEP has has a higher contribution limit than say the traditional.
And what does SEP mean?
What's that now?
What does SEP mean? Because we're saying SEP, so for people who aren't familiar with what that is exactly.
The Simplified Employment Pension IRA.
Okay.
Is what that stands for. So SEP, SEP, Simplified Employee Pension.
Okay.
And the reason they call it that is just for yourself, and you're kind of setting yourself up for your own retirement plan, which is why the word pension is in there. It
Got
gets
it.
a little confusing. It's pension. Most people think of a pension as guarantees.
Mm-hmm.
It's not necessarily guaranteed. It's just setting yourself up with a plan for retirement.
So as a solo practitioner, you've got a couple of different options. And again, this is where sort of you're taxed now or taxed then. Is that right? Depending on like a traditional versus a Roth and
Correct. So the
Okay.
traditional side is what they would call qualified money that's tax deferred. You're deferring paying the taxes this year. You'll pay it when you start to pull the money out.
Mm-hmm.
The Roth IRA is you're paying the taxes this year on your money. It grows tax deferred, and you can pull the money out tax free past age 59 and a half.
But with a Roth IRA, if you make a certain amount of money, you can't contribute to it. Is that correct?
Yes, there are limitations.
Mhm.
There are what they would call a backdoor Roth IRA option.
Yeah.
Where you can kind of go around that rule. There's a bunch of implications there depending on from taxation standpoint, but in general, there are some income limitations to do a direct contribution to a Roth IRA.
Yeah.
The Roth IRA's contribution is $6,000 contribution limit below the age of 50.
Okay, awesome. And like I have sort of a mix of all of these things but I've been, kind of contributing to this for many years. What is so let's say you're in your 30s and you don't have any of this set up yet. Are you doomed?
Not at all. No.
Okay.
Not at all. I mean, unless you're planning on retiring when you're age 31, then maybe you're doomed.
Right.
No, so much of it is, step one, have a conversation with a professional that understands what you're building for. And I know we're talking about retirement plans, but I'm really of the opinion of what do you have set up for yourself prior to a retirement plan? Like if you don't have, say, an emergency fund set up,
Mm-hmm.
start there. Like you don't have to contribute to a retirement plan. The retirement plan is not the savior for your financial status. It really isn't. Like you can have all of your money outside of a retirement plan and actually still retire.
Mm-hmm.
There's this like misnomer out there that you have to put everything in a retirement plan. And, for retirement only purposes, yeah, that's a good place to put money. But what can happen to a 30-year-old prior to retirement over the next 10, 20, 30 years?
A lot,
right?
Yeah.
Practice growth, opportunities, buying a house, selling a house, a bunch of different things. So having your money in what we would call a liquid type of asset where you can actually get after it without having to pay a bunch of taxes and penalties is something to really consider first prior to a retirement plan.
Yeah, that makes sense because like you said, a lot can happen between your 30s to retirement at 70 or 75. Setting up that emergency fund and looking at your kind of what we spoke about earlier, looking at your debt ratios and how can you make that work for you and look at what taxes you're paying now and how you're paying them. And then finally then looking at, well, what do I need for retirement? What do I need to do for retirement that makes sense for me right now because I can put money elsewhere. Like you said, maybe it's into real estate, buying a home or something like that. Oh my gosh, there's so much to think about.
Yeah. And the biggest thing, I've already said this once, I'll say it again, I was talking about taxes. It's also where your money's sitting. Again, don't put all of your eggs in one basket. If you have your money in different style of an account, some in retirement plans, some in just a straight investment, some in real estate, some in savings. When you have that kind of diversification of where your money's sitting, how much more flexible is your life just from a financial standpoint?
Yeah, I would think much more flexible.
A ton more flexible because if everything's sitting in a retirement plan and you want to pull some money out to put into the practice, that might be the best thing to do, but you're probably going to pay taxes and penalties.
Right. So then you're kind of losing money there.
Exactly.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Lots of sense. This is really good stuff. Thank you so much for sharing all of this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, something that I know you guys do is you look at people's sort of financial well-being, if you will, but you also look at the person themselves,
Yes.
right? And so what are some things that maybe we can look at as ourselves at our business to kind of reflect upon for next year? Like what, because I know that your process is a little bit different. You're really looking at, not, like I said, not just the business or the cash flow, but you're looking at the person and their goals and visions and things like that. So what advice do you have for listeners out there who kind of want to get their financial house in order, but I'm sure there are some things to think about before you even have that discussion?
There's maybe two or three things I'll say to your question. The first and foremost, and this is often not spoke about, and this is going to sound probably kind of weird, is what is your philosophy with your finances? What is your value? Right? So in my family, when we look at money, right, it's not about, and especially medical practice and naturopaths and physical therapists, right? Like, typically you're not getting into the industry to make a ton of money, although there might be a byproduct. You're getting into it to help a bunch of people.
Right.
So the value of the money, oftentimes when I ask that question, is, well, I want to help as many people. Well, to do that, my practice has to be very successful. Like, without the cash flow coming into the practice and building that growth in the practice, how are you helping more and more people? Maybe it's a different way, but what is that philosophy with that? Because that alone will have you direct where your money's going. Okay. And then after you have that kind of philosophy, step two is going to be more around, where is it you are currently at? Like, like, you could do a quick net worth equation, right? Like, add up all of your assets, checking accounts, savings accounts, retirement accounts, real estate. Add up all your liabilities, student loans, credit cards, mortgages, and then subtract the two numbers. That's your net worth as it is today. And if you did exactly what I just said, we actually listed out your assets on one column, listed out your liabilities on the other column, you just got a lot of your balance sheet on one page. How many people have ever seen that, even though that's a simple activity to do?
Yeah. Great.
And then you could look at the building next year. Okay, if your plan is to hire another doctor or buy real estate or invest in your practice more, what's your plan? How are you currently sitting, and how could you possibly do that? If you don't have liquid cash or liquidity to do that, well, now your first step next year is actually having some money set aside that's liquid or accessible to do that.
Yeah. So really, like you said, having your philosophy, your values, and your goals, look at what you have and what you don't have, and see if you can help make a plan for 2020. I think that's great advice.
Yeah, it's money in America is taboo, right? It's a taboo topic to talk about. We don't like talking about it.
Right.
We don't even, half the time we don't even talk to our children about it, right? And it's a taboo factor, it's a busyness factor, it's all this wrapped in one. And for someone to take, especially as business owners, we're wearing what, 30 different hats.
At least
one of those hats needs to be CFO.
Right.
So hopefully we're taking a day out of the business to look at how the business is financially, and that could be an exercise for that.
Yeah, I like that. Taking a financial business day.
Yeah.
And really love it. I'm going to start doing that. I have to put it into my calendar, because if it's not in the calendar, it doesn't get done.
Yep. I'm like you. I get it.
Yeah. This is great. Thank you so much. Is there anything that we kind of didn't touch upon that you're like, ooh, I really wanted your listeners to get this info?
The biggest piece that I want your listeners to get, and really anyone to get, is have conversations about money with someone you know and trust.
Yep. It's great advice.
It really is that simple, because it starts there.
Yeah, you're right. It does. And we don't talk about it enough. I know I probably don't talk about it enough and probably need a little more guidance and things like that. So I think that's great advice. So have more conversations about money with people you trust is
Yep.
great advice. And now my last question that I always ask everyone, speaking of advice, is knowing where you are now in your practice and in life, what advice would you give to yourself right out of college?
I think it would have been slow down. I was your traditional person that got out of college and said, I want to retire early. And so I hit the ground running and I started just grinding away. And not that that's a bad thing, but as I've gotten married and have kids, I look back at that time and I'm like, I could have done a couple of different things had I just slowed down, and it wouldn't have affected me in a negative way the way I thought it was. And even if it affected me in a negative way, it might have been worth it.
Right. Yeah. A lot of people say that same thing, and it's always kind of slow down and enjoy where you are in the moment. And you are not alone in that train of thought for sure. Well, Ryan, thanks so much. Where can people find you?
Yeah. So if you want to go to quantifiedfinancial.com, and you can find all the information you could possibly want about me, whether you like it or not, there.
Perfect. And of course, we'll have a link to the website at podcast.healthywealthysmart.com under this episode. So one click will take you all to Ryan's info about his company and their philosophy and how they work. And I highly suggest you click on over there. So Ryan, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. And we did a nice podcast swap, which I always love to do. So thanks so much.
Absolutely. I appreciate being on.
And everyone, thanks so much for listening. Have a great couple of days and stay healthy, wealthy, and smart.
Well, a huge thanks to Ryan for coming on and sharing all that great information on financial planning, especially if you're an entrepreneur or new business owner. And of course, thank you to Optima, a net health company. Optima Therapy for Outpatient is a software solution enabling therapists and staff to do their job efficiently and accurately. Their software provides anytime, anywhere access to documentation, even while disconnected, and workflows that streamline patient care and save valuable time. You want to check out their new on-demand video to learn what's in store for outpatient therapy practices in 2020, and you can check that out at gooptimahcs.com/healthywealthy2020.
Thank you for listening, and please subscribe to the podcast at podcast.healthywealthysmart.com. And don't forget to follow us on social media.